Hey, everybody. This is the Drew Experience, the show that's 80% combat sports and 20% everything else. Today's guest is a real big one. I've been wanting to have him on for a long time. We actually know each other from where he had a business when I was working at an old supermarket, and we kind of always touched base. And then eventually always kept in touch even after I left. And today he wants to come on. He's the definition of a Canadian success story, coming to Canada, owning a business in the martial arts industry in a Sambo school in Côte St. Luc. He's done so much good work to help build a better community of teaching kids the importance of martial arts with Sambo and how it can make them better inside and outside the gym and dojo. He's also an honors history student in high school, and he's also studied in politics. Very well traveled, very well versed, direct, simple, but we all love him. Benny Lokshin, welcome to the Drew Experience.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much for that introduction. That was very pleasant to hear from you. So yeah, actually today I'm here to talk about sports, about Sambo, about maybe some controversial sides of what's going on right now, given the fact that first of all, I'd like to introduce myself a little bit. I'm actually half Ukrainian. I discovered it only a few months ago. I was sure that I'm 100% Russian, but yeah, actually from my father's side, everybody comes from Ukraine. And the way that, well, I was born in Uzbekistan, but anybody that follows a little bit of that European history, they know that once the Germans started going towards Russia, so a lot of Ukrainians, Russians that were in danger zones, they had kind of two options: either you stay here or you die. Stay here or you die, or you go to another place like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and you can have your own land and thrive over there. So that's where I ended up in Uzbekistan, and here I am today in Canada after. Like you said, lots of traveling, living in Israel for 11 years, living the reality over there. And today, I'm certainly 100% can say that I'm a proud Canadian, love being in this country, and I love everything that I'm doing, bringing my culture and my past to help children, athletes, and yeah.
You know what I really have to say, what I also, so, there's two things. So first, since you're helping children, I remember when I first saw your school and how much work you were doing, like the privates with special needs kids. And like, they were really like, they look so forward to coming there, and you did such a good job. And I think that's where I always say, when people tell me what is the best sports to put someone with special needs in, I always say martial arts. It's individual.
I agree with you.
And they will feel included right away with the right teacher.
That's true. That's true. And I think big reason why martial arts, and it doesn't really matter what martial art you sign up to. I mean, it could be karate, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, judo. Doesn't really matter. The core aspect of martial arts is being able to fall down and to get up and to tough it out. And even though it's hard and it's very mentally tolling to be able to continue to fall down and to get up, and to fall down and to get up. That creates the resilience that I saw in my students. And like you said, even in special needs, that aspect of resilience and self-confidence, and knowing that you're able to get up, doesn't matter how many times you fall. That is true what you're saying, that we see children really succeed in martial arts compared to not that I'm saying that other sports are bad, but individual sports do play a very big role in the development of the child, and I agree with you with that.
Very true. Now, you're also born in Uzbekistan,
Yes,
and
sir.
Uzbekistan is a very interesting country because that part of the world, yes, there was Soviet influence, but what was it like growing up in Uzbekistan being Jewish, because it's a Muslim country?
Yes, sir. So personally, I don't remember because I left at 4 years old. So I was born into that. Obviously, I do have the anecdotal stories of my parents, of my grandparents, and of my family that still lives there. Now, I would like to say one thing first thing. When you hear about the stands, most people in Canada or in the US or wherever the people that are listening to are from, they imagine a broken down country. Uzbekistan, they see it as a desert and stuff like that. That's not the case. So the architecture over there is very developed. The people have a very long-lasting culture. They have multiple cultures in there that make that they speak of Uzbek and Russian. And with time, obviously, the whole area itself it evolved quite a lot. Um, but really, what I know about the country is unlike other places, like for example, the some African countries or central, not Central Asian, some Middle Eastern country where the Jews had to run away during the 70s and the 80s. That was never the case in Uzbekistan,
Hmm.
Kazakhstan, and all the rest of the stans. And I won't be able to explain exactly why, but it's a different, more westernized style of Islam that is over there, which is
Hmm.
actually a very interesting topic because what is going on right now does have a specific effect on that. But I think we're going to touch that topic in a little while.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, we're going to stick to sports for now.
We have to. We have to. So
Yes, sir.
Sambo. So Sambo is the sport of the law that's in Russia. It's big in Israel because so many migrants like you immigrate to Israel. So
Mm-hmm.
when my so Sambo has become so popular, and because it's Habib Nurmagomedov's background, do you feel like the impact he's had has helped grow Sambo
Oh,
globally?
tremendously, tremendously. I would say the biggest growth before him was when Fyodor was still active.
Hmm.
Emelianenko. So obviously this is a Bellator fighter. Dana White wanted this guy on his roster for I don't know how many decades. Well, it just stands to say for how long this guy was fighting. But it's definitely once Khabib really stood on the international stage of the UFC
Hmm.
that Sambo got that light. Now, the interesting thing about it is that we opened our school back in 2009 in Montreal. So we immigrated to Canada in 2007. We had to touch base a little bit, get our feet wet with how the country works, with what are the business rules and all of that. And 2 years later, my father he started his first school. That was in the West Island, and for about that was 2009. So we were open for 11 years. For 11 years, we were growing the company, the gym in Canada, and I did notice that the moment that Khabib stood on the international stage, like I said, it's not just the Russian community that started getting more and more interested, but it's simple Canadians that had no idea what Sambo is, but they just see this guy coming in, hugging everybody, like they say, and just beating everybody up. So yeah, definitely Khabib he helped Sambo quite a lot on that stage.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. And Sambo, as you said, when we spoke at the time, because when I used to come by with my for my coffee and muffin on break, I used to talk to you and you used to say, I get everybody. I even get 40-year-olds coming to start. And Sambo is you can start at any point. It doesn't matter.
That's true. That's true. Why didn't you train as well?
I'm a karate guy. I'm a striker, but
Yeah,
the plan
striker.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a striker. I respect grappling, but my goal is to get my black belt in striking and then move into grappling because I think the key is when you're doing martial arts, everybody wants to get a black belt, but then let's say you get like one belt and you go to another style of art, you're gonna
Mhm.
get very confused, and that thought pattern
That is
is
true.
gonna. It's like there's something I heard about where if you don't complete that objective of getting a black belt in something, it does something to your brain, and it's not bad, but it's always recommended get the black belt first and then move into like another
That is
style.
true. That is true. Even if we'll compare, like, as simplistic as is Kyokushin karate with
Hmm.
Taekwondo or Muay Thai, all of them kick, but it's completely different style of kicks, different stances, and all of that. So I do see your point that if somebody, like, let's say, got to a brown belt in karate and starts training in Taekwondo, like for example, I do see that there would be a lot of conflict of interest in the techniques, in the styles, and all of that. As for grappling, I would definitely agree with you. So I've done judo for I don't know how many years. Actually, I stopped at brown belt. I was going for my black belt, but life got in the way, the cut and all of that. So I started focusing a lot more on just my sambo. I've trained with quite a few Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, and let me tell you that even though we have very similar submissions, with jiu-jitsu and in Sambo, the approach to the grappling of it is absolutely completely different. While Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, they would focus more on the ground, the Sambo guys would focus a lot more on the standing up, which kind of has a coherence with the history of Sambo and where it comes from. I mean, that system was developed for the Russian army.
Mhm.
So it was for the Red Army. They were using Sambo as a hand-to-hand combat in case that they didn't have a weapon, which is historically Russians didn't have a lot of weapons. They did have a lot of soldiers, like in World War One or World War Two. So in that aspect, yeah, Sambo is a lot more focused on standing up than just ground game. But yeah.
I do remember also seeing Teddy Roosevelt, the former US president. Apparently there's like a famous of a painting of him or with meeting doing like a they say the first ever Sambo match
Mm-hmm.
with Tsar Nicholas, not the second, the last Tsar, but like the one before, because
Yeah.
apparently one of the Tsars was a very big fanatic of fitness and martial arts.
Okay, cool. That's a new one for me. You did your research better than myself.
Mm.
Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah. So, well, Teddy Roosevelt was an outdoorsman and he loved boxing. And he always believed that like he always believed everybody should find something worth suffering for because suffering brings joy. As crazy
Mm-hmm.
as it sounds. Now you say that today, people say, no, it's not. Anyways, that was a time when we didn't have technology. So Teddy, one day there was a painting where he said all men should get into wrestling. And then
Mm-hmm.
in Russia there was a painting that I found, and I can't remember what site it was on. It was on the internet, and it showed the Tsar watching a Sambo or wrestling match, and it was so interesting. And they say that this was when the Tsar became a fan of combat sports, and combat sports slowly started to grow in the pre-Soviet days. Because remember,
Mm-hmm.
if we look at Russian history, there was the czars from like whenever to 1917, about
Mm-hmm.
1906,
About that.
and then it's Soviet to from 1917 to 1991. But it's interesting how much like in the pre-internet age that martial arts was kind of growing, like with boxing and wrestling.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think white was such a national interest and even a cultural shock for Russia and for the Tsars is because the history of Sambo it's something that wasn't seen before in the world, just like when Jiu-Jitsu started in Brazil. The idea is um, Sambo is actually just a combination of a bunch of
Mhm.
martial arts. So that would be arguably the initial MMA, the original MMA. The reason is you've got one guy, I'm not going to get into names because everybody can Google that, but you have one guy, we'll call him Asia guy. Asia guy, he goes to Japan. He became the first black belt in judo that is non-Japanese. After that, he took a little bit of intake about karate, about different styles that were in the region. And on his route back to Moscow, back to Russia, he passed also to see what styles, what approach of wrestling do the Mongolians have, the Tatar, the Kazakhstan, all of those national wrestling styles. He brought them all together to Russia, and then there was another guy that went to Europe, that he looked into Savate, he looked into Greco-Roman, he looked into Olympic wrestling or the equivalent of what it was at that time. What happened is that both of them, when they met in Russia, they cross-referenced their techniques, and they created Sambo, which is as much as you're saying there was no newspaper and social media. This is a very fascinating take on that, because you took two complete different cultures of nations that are not connected. They're not in communication during that time, but you brought them together to create a sport that is still used and is still dominating the MMA world even today.
I think it's very important too, because what we see with Sambo and wrestling, especially, is that you could be from Canada and not speak a word of Russian.
Mm-hmm.
You could be from, say, Novosibirsk, which is on the border with China and Russia,
Yeah.
and you could be doing judo or Sambo too, and you guys meet in the tournament, and you have that common language and become friends right away. And it's crazy how there might be a big language or communication barrier, but just that respect for the training brings people together. And
That is
Sambo,
true. That is very true. I 100% agree with that. And I find it's even more true for those sports, for the traditional martial arts, than it is to MMA. Because as much as I love MMA, the MMA world has got quite contaminated with the media and the influence, the political influence that don't belong in sports. Unfortunately, we start seeing more and more, especially in the US.
It's very true. Like it has that pro wrestling feel, and this is not martial arts is martial arts. I'm never going to a Kyokushin tournament to say I'm never going to wear my sunglasses and with my cap backwards and say so I'm fighting. So it's like so I'm fighting this guy from some random. He's from America, and I'm gonna show him that Canada can kick ass, and that why Kyokushin is the best. We don't do that, and that's the
true.
thing. That's the thing with that. That's why I think that's why there is an insecurity of bringing traditional martial arts to the mainstream, because then there's going to be those bad actors that get in and try to contaminate it, like we see with like politics in the UFC and
it's true.
pro wrestling.
In your opinion, I'm assuming you watch the UFC.
Of course.
Who was the last true martial artist of the UFC in your opinion?
It's a very good question. I would have to honestly say there's two that come to mind, and there's even one active one still that's fighting today.
Cool.
So the first one is going to be George St. Pierre, because
that's exactly. Yeah.
George St. Pierre.
Certainly.
Then I would say Khabib, because when Khabib retired, I think after the passing of Abdulmanap, his father, there was something that really changed, because death changes everybody.
Yeah.
But Khabib really grew up from the passing of Abdulmanap, and you can see him now how he's trying to live that legacy. And the other fighter, that's the third one that's active, is he's fighting in Bellator. It's he's fighting today actually, and he's my favorite active fighter since I'm half Iranian. Gegard Mousasi, because Gegard never talks trash. He doesn't like talking. He does his business. He keeps it respectful, and you'll never hear him like in a scandal or trying to get a soundbite. Does his thing, and that's what I think a lot of fighters need to look to as templates.
It's true. I mean, I'm gonna put Conor McGregor into that equation, because obviously he's the foreman of that outspoken, aggressive, I'm the best, that kind of like mentality into the UFC. But if you look at all the successful fighters, most of them are quiet. Like look at Dustin Poirier, look at Khabib, look at well, I would say easy, but the guy changed quite a lot in the past.
He likes to act like an anime character, and when that happens, I just tune him out. I'd say Robert Whittaker too, his last opponent.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Michael Bisping was pretty nice too before he decided to go full rage and But,
now he's back to being nice again. I think Michael Bisping is one of the best commentators that is up and coming, because he's well spoken. And I always say this about Brits: they are concise and they know what they're saying. So that's what I love about Bisping being with the UFC as a commentator. It's
true, and I find that it's not only that. They're also, like you said, they're direct. They say things as they are, and I find that this is a very essential thing for MMA and for martial arts, because everybody went through that in martial arts. Let me explain. Everybody who practiced martial arts have seen their progress, and at some point they were confronted with a roadblock. And what would you do during a roadblock in martial arts? You usually speak to your coach or your sensei or the equivalent, and you would be like, "Hey, coach, listen, I'm stuck. I feel like I suck. I can't beat that guy." And what would your coach do? Is he going to sugarcoat it and put it into nice terms? No, he's going to tell you that you suck, but he's going to tell you exactly what you need to do to improve. And this is going back to martial arts. It's the mentality of martial arts. It builds resilience, and it builds honesty, and it builds the character of the person, which, like you say, Michael Bisping earned it.
He did. I also would say too, what I like too about the Dagestani fighters coming in, or the
Yeah.
current Bellator champion and welterweight Yaroslav Amosov, who's a Ukrainian, they have this humility to them. And people say, well, why don't the Russians or the like those from like the Slavic nations do much talking? They don't need to. They are
That's
tough
it.
people. They have seen hardship like you have never imagined. I want to ask you this because you're in Sambo now.
Yeah.
I have this theory, okay, and it has to do with like religion too. I think if you're devoted in your religion and you do martial arts, it makes you a much more disciplined and better fighter.
Yes and no. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it necessarily has to do anything with religion,
Mm-hmm.
because in that sense, how come there are no Jewish fighters or Buddhist Shaolin monks or great outspoken Christian fighters? I don't think that it really has to do with religion, but for sure it does. Religion uh, gives you a certain regiment for life. You have a
Mm-hmm.
set uh, a set of rules that you need to follow to comply with that religion. And generally, it goes whether you agree with it or not, because it comes in your tradition and your culture, and it's being passed from generation to generation. So when you grow in a reality where traditional values of a man, of a woman, of just of your religion, of your culture are being maintained, it's quite normal to see those people being so strong, resilient, committed. And it's very bizarre for Americans or Canadians to see that they're like, how come all those Dagestani, or how come all those Russian guys, they kick everybody's butts? Um, I think that really answers the question. It's the cultural aspect of that, because yes, obviously we see a lot of American fighters, but many of them also come from Africa. So we've got Ngannou, we've got Usman, we've got all those guys that they're not Russian, they're not religious, they're not American. Well, Usman apparently is, but they have that cultural thing that made them tough. And I also think it really has to do with the reality of where you live. Because let's be real, if you were grown into poverty and you had to fight to survive, and you grew that mentality from an early childhood, at a certain point, even if you're faced with the hardest and the strongest and the scariest opponent in a different weight class than you have it just in you. It's something. It's the fighter mentality. It's the fighting IQ. And
That's what we see with Hamzat, the current. They say he just needs one more fight to blow up and become a global star.
yeah.
And he's from Chechnya. We all know the history about Chechnya.
Oh yeah.
Hard people,
Oh yeah.
hard people. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
have seen a lot
Oh
in
yeah.
the history of Russia.
That is
And
true.
he lives in Sweden because a lot of the Chechens after the collapse of
Isn't that
communism.
where Zabit also? He's also in Sweden, right?
Zabit's in Russia. He's
It,
training but he goes to New Jersey too with Mark Henry. That's his coach. But Zabit
okay.
is in Dagestan. Zabit's story is out of a movie. That guy has he went to a wushu school in Dagestan,
Yeah.
a private school. It's crazy, and and I love the way he fights because he has a sambo background with judo, and he's also done Kyokushin for sure. The way he
Oh
throws
yeah.
that
Yeah.
kick, he's the I miss him. He's my favorite
What happened
145er.
with him? I know that he had some not mental, but he had some health issues that I'm assuming brought to some mental issues, and he got removed from the roster. But kind of didn't hear from him since 2019, since he got the fight. I think it was with Rodriguez that was
Yeah,
canceled.
Yair Rodriguez, they kept making that fight. I really think that Rodriguez was dodging because we all know that it's not a good style matchup for Rodriguez because
For
he's a
sure.
Taekwondo specialist.
Hmm.
But there was also the fact that Zabit did have cardiac issues that they were looking into because of fatigue.
Okay.
So I think that's where he took an extended leave. But now apparently he's getting ready and he
Cool.
wants to come back. And he also has a brother that's killing it in Kadyrov's promotion. Like this, he's up and coming. So the Zabit's family. It's I'm if you're a 145er, be worried.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, but it's I think I saw it. who was he standing with? He was standing right beside Fyodor Emelianenko in a picture most recently, and we're talking about a 240-pound dude. Like Fyodor is a big guy. I think he's 6'1", while Zabit is 6'3", if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they stand beside each other, and Fyodor looks tiny with him, and makes me wonder, how can Zabit fight at 150? What the hell?
He's got those genetics, man. He's one of those weird genetics. So when it comes to Sambo too, I mean, your father had first. You guys opened up in the West Island, then you had other franchises.
That's
What
it.
when you opened up in Côte Saint Luc, which is a predominantly Côte Saint Luc's a very interesting area. It's a Jewish
Yeah.
community, and
Mhm.
there's like two sides of Côte Saint Luc. There's like Côte Saint Luc with Cavendish Mall, and then you have Côte Saint Luc, like where the academy was, but
That's
it's
it.
where a lot of like the immigrants go live when they come to Canada, especially the Russian Jewish immigrants. So what was it like? What do you feel your school played in the role of getting them acclimated to Canadian society?
Well, initially, like you said yourself, and that's a very good point. For us, it was just the logistically smartest move to do because we started in the West Island,
Mm-hmm.
and whether you want to or not, the people that live in the West Island of Montreal, um, they they are generally immigrants that came to the country many years ago, or they're
Mm-hmm.
second or third generation. And what happens is they don't have the same mentality of Russians or
Mm-hmm.
of Eastern Europeans that just immigrated to Canada. So obviously we did want to catch that market. So in a business sense, obviously it just did make sense to go there. But the change that came afterward, I didn't expect that because I did see children and adults that came from even conflict areas like Ukraine during the 2014 conflicts over there. Like I've seen people that came here as refugee or as immigrants, and I saw in front of my eyes, I saw how they came depressed, stressed,
Mm-hmm.
tendu, with a lot of tension. You speak a little bit of French, right?
Of course, I can speak. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm not
perfect.
bilingual, but I understand the expressions like the when you say when you say it.
That's it. Yeah, no, I might slip a few words in
It's okay.
French here and there. It's a natural thing that comes to me. But yeah, no, I saw the progress of these children from going from overly stressed, from having health issues, from some of them even obese. Uh, Run, ask their parents, Mom, Dad, the class is in an hour and a half. Let's go now. I want to be there. I want to be there early. And obviously, as a coach, that's super motivating. That feels good. You see these children coming to you, and you know that you're helping them, even if it's a minimal thing, minimal help. You know that it gets there. But the community that grew out of it, the strength, the connections, the people that I saw just grow and flower, and the kids that man, I started coaching. I'm almost 30 years old, so I started coaching when I was 19. So it's been 11 years that I was coaching, minus 2 years of COVID. So for 11 years I was coaching, and if I'm looking at it, I was 19. So if I was coaching a kid that was 6 years old, well, that kid is today 18 years old, and I see those kids messaging me, and I did notice a tendency that my students, even today, they look physically good. It looks like whatever I taught them, whatever my father taught them, whatever my brother taught them, it stuck with them, and it kind of like shaped them into the person of who they are today.
Mm.
So yeah.
That is return on investment in the long
Oh yeah,
term,
for
man.
sure, for sure.
And you can and listen, the health is wealth. So you basically gave them the wealth of and information to that they're healthy and they have a good and because when you look good and when you feel when you are in good shape, you feel good and look good. And they must be crushing it in their fields now.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I see many of them. Some of them became real estate agents. Some of them are studying microbiology. Some of them, like they went on a lot of spheres, and I'm proud of my students. I honestly, I'm excited to go back in coaching. It's not gonna happen in Côte Saint Luc for the little while. It's my brother that is there right now. He actually works in the Cavendish Mall,
Mm-hmm.
the gym at West End Gym over there.
Mm-hmm.
So he coaches over there, but for now I'm kind of staying in the background. I'm waiting for everything to end and to stabilize before I can start coaching again.
I think that's the thing. Like, I mean, everybody had to come. Some people had to take a real big step back
Yeah.
And recalibrate. I can't tell you like the school that I'm in because it's all the way in Boucherville for Kyokushin because it's hard to find. Like, there's a lot of good Kyokushin schools, but the one for me is in
Mm-hmm.
Boucherville, and I can't tell you how much times like they've had to close, recalibrate, and they're very lucky to have a massive student base to stay open and
That's it.
manage to do it. But it's just a lot of I think the plan you're doing is very smart to just
Mm-hmm.
wait it all out completely and then come back with a burning fire.
Exactly, exactly. That is the only way to approach it, because like so many other coaches that I've spoken with over the past months or even year, we went through a lot. We went through a lot. Not a lot of people can understand it. Not a lot of people can associate, because nowadays a lot of people work from home or they work in an office, so they didn't really have let's say an immediate danger for their job, and many did, of course. Um, but the coaches, the school owners, the gym owners, we took a big toll in this one, and I find it quite sad, because we were the people that were leading for stronger mental health, for stronger physique, for more resilience, for mental illnesses or depression or anxiety, that could have helped a lot of people that were suffering from it in the past 2 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I mean, I gained so much weight. I mean, when you first met me, I was 185 and now I'm up to right now I'm weighing 220. Like I was weighing up to above 230. Now I'm down to 220-ish around, which is good.
Okay.
So it's good. But I really think that the gyms and dojos and the academies should have always stayed open because
Yeah.
they combat mental health issues the most.
That's it. That's it. And like there was always a way to work around it with the distancing, with even
Mhm.
trying to maybe do it outdoors and stuff like that. And for what you said, well, you gained about 20% of your original weight. Uh, I've seen students that after 3 months with me, the guy was obese, and now his BMI is just overweight after just 3 months. So I see drops of 10, 20, 30 pounds in short periods of time. And I got in touch with a lot of these people, and obviously just like you, just like even myself, I used to fight at 150. I'm 180.
Well, here's the thing for me. I was binge eating a lot too. That was my biggest problem. And then I had to change my work schedule, which I think helped the most because the one thing I've noticed is if I eat at 6 p.m.
Mhm.
versus 7 p.m., I notice I feel better the next day and whatnot. But if I eat at like past 7 p.m., I feel heavy. I don't want to do it. So that's where like that I think too, it's about how you time it too. Nutrition is a big thing. It's the biggest thing. And binge eating is the worst thing you can do, even if you train hard.
Oh, for
Don't
sure,
binge
for
eat.
sure, for sure, 100%. And it's very interesting, the point that you're saying right now. Let me ask you, what time usually do you go to bed?
10:30, 11, maybe 11:30. It's
That
between
makes
10 and
sense.
11:30.
Because if you think about it, generally, for the hardest food to metabolize, your stomach would be taking up to 4 hours to digest it, which kind of makes sense with your timeline. If you eat at 6 o'clock and you go to bed at 10:30, so you give your body 4.5 hours to digest, to process the food,
Mhm.
and then you're completely rested. Well, your body is not working on digesting, so you can go to bed, and then your body is working on resting itself, repairing any tissue tears, or any type of recovery from an activity that you did in that day, which is something that I was actually telling a lot to my students about. Did you ever look into intermediate or intermittent
Yeah.
fasting? Yeah.
I do that on Sundays now, and sometimes I do one day a month. I just fast completely. I still drink water and coffee, but I
Hmm.
just don't eat, and it's like it's made such a difference. I feel like I'm clearer, my
Yeah.
mind is better. It's better, and it's really working. It's something I do recommend to everybody get into.
That's it. It's true. And there is a lot of different approaches for people that are kind of like scared for that. And just talking about the religion that you said earlier, if we look at Judaism or Islam, in Islam, they have the Ramadan. I mean, fasting is part of their culture. In Judaism, there is Yom Kippur, which is for 24 hours, you completely fast. You don't eat anything, and you kind of let your body uh, heal itself, cleanse itself. So it's true what you're saying there, and the approach that I do find with intermediate fasting. First of all, I don't recommend it to everybody. Before you start any type of diet, you should always look with your physician or to see with a nutritionist to see what is your blood level, hormonal levels, what is your pressure level. You need to have a lot of basic information about your own body and your hormones before you start getting yourself involved with the diet. But for men, for athletes, and for people that suffer from anxiety or from insomnia, I did notice that once they started intermediate fasting, even for a short period of time, they did see a lot of improvements in those areas. It does have a lot to play with the insulin levels, with the tissue repair levels, but it's also biologically it makes sense because of the order of the metabolism of the foods that you have. Because the more you eat, the more you have calorie intake, should I say, the more you have fat reserves in your body. And when you're stretching that fasting period, well, your body has no choice but to use those fats that you have stored in your body to keep itself well, from starving and being active, to keep you active. So if, for example, like you said yourself, your last meal is at 6 p.m., when is your first meal?
8 a.m. maybe, because
8
I go to the
a.m.
gym in the morning. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's it. So yeah, so for example, when I used to do that, I usually would have my breakfast at noon
Mm-hmm.
or even 1 p.m. And then my last meal would be around 8 or 9 p.m., depending on the day and depending what time I would do. So what it gives you a window of 8 hours that you eat and 16 hours that you don't eat. Which sounds scary, 16 hours not eating, but you sleep for 8 hours. So you don't eat 4 hours before and you don't eat 4 hours after you woke up.
It's not that bad. It's a good payoff.
That's it. That's it. And anyone anyone listening and interested about it, I definitely invite you to look up on the topic, intermediate fasting. Um, but don't just, unless you're very healthy, unless you're very in touch with your own body, definitely speak with your physician about different dieting regimes that could help you, because dieting does help.
It does. All right. Well, that's good for the martial arts and fitness. And now everyone, I cannot tell you how many people are messaging me when I said I'm doing a podcast. If you want to ask me, people were DMing me. It's like I had to put my history tutor hat on again and brush up on my knowledge. And like my friend Mohammed, he's like, I need you to give me a crash course in the whole Russia conflict in an hour. And I was like, we're going to be talking for 5 hours if you really want everything.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. May I ask you what is, because I know that you have some credentials in Cold War history and Russian history. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you my credentials. So let's start first with my life credentials. I am a first generation how does it work with the generation? First generation means you're born here, right? Or your parents?
Yeah, I'm not even sure.
Okay, well, anyways, life credentials wise, I'll just reword it. My mother's side is Belarusian Jewish. They were from Minsk, Belarus. So we were told about the histories of the pogroms, the Civil War, World War II, especially how my great aunt, my great grandmother on my mom's side, actually, what happened was the story was during the pogroms, the Soviets would come to their village and say, hey, we're going to protect you because you're a minority. And my aunt and my great grandmother basically said, well, you're full of shit because you're just saying that to get into power. Because I know eventually when you get into power, you're going to start persecuting us because we're a minority and we believe in religion. So they were smart. So they saw the whole conflict happen from a mile away in 1904 with like the Tsar getting ready to collapse, the Cossacks being used against the Jews. And that's the first thing. So that was my first credential, learning about anti-Semitism in then Tsarist Russia and then Soviet Russia. My other credential for Russian history is my BA is in history, but my courses were always taken with modern US history on the Cold War. And then also I took pre-Soviet Russia history and then Soviet to the history to understand both sides of the conflict, because we're only told one side. But I think you really, but because I was so curious, loving Russian history, loving Russian hockey players because of hockey, I really wanted to understand why, what is the Russian psychology based on history, and why are we where we are today?
That is fascinating. That you do have some serious credentials there. Let me just ask you one question. I think I missed this one. When did your family immigrate to Canada?
They came in my great grandmother. So my mother's born here. My great grandmother
Yeah.
came in 1905.
So you're
But
second generation.
I'm second. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how it works. So
That's
but
it.
the thing is, it's like when you come from a Jewish household, you're
Mhm.
always told about the stories about the
Of course.
if the
Of course.
Holocaust. But if
course.
you're especially from Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, we are the Russian Jews, like look, all the Jews went through stuff, but the Russian Jews went through some of the worst atrocities
Oh, for
known
sure.
to mankind.
For sure. For sure. And this is actually a topic that I find very, very interesting. Well, first of all, I would like to say for anybody that is listening, um, I'm against war. Um, one of the things that martial arts have taught me, I'm going to bring this multiple times in my opinion, is that before you reach the point of battle, before you reach fighting, you must de-escalate the situation. And ah man, it's been so many, 15 years that I'm in Canada already, and I wasn't in one single fight just because the person was intoxicated and wasn't being able to be communicating. But every conflict that I had, every time I would try to de-escalate the situation, and I find that this uh, the lack of discussion today is what led to the world of where we are today. It's because everybody wants to show their muscles, everybody wants to show how strong they are and how much weapons, and just show off, but nobody is discussing anymore. And so like I say, I'm against war. I don't think Russians want to see their Ukrainian brothers dying, and I don't think Ukrainians want to see the Russian brothers dying or invading them or fighting. So that's the most important thing, is that this fight is not it's not between Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde, everybody that just has an opinion about it or listens to it and all of that. This is a fight of elites and something that is beyond our understanding. Because something that the past 2 years especially showed us is that there is a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that the average citizen is not aware of. And because of the lack of discussion, I think that not only because of the war or whatever is happening in Ukraine, there is a lot of problems that societal problems that were created that could be avoided with discussion. So, like I said, I'm against war.
Me too. I'm the first one that will say, like you, I'm against war too. People are asking me, how come you're so passionate and obsessed about this stuff? I said, because when you learn about it in history class, and then when you start watching the movie The Day After or Threads, it gives you a very disturbed vision of what could happen if this escalates to nuclear war, because everybody thinks that it will never happen, but we are much closer today to a nuclear conflict than we ever were. And I always say, if anyone wants to understand how bad how zero sum with nuclear war, watch The Day After, not The Day After Tomorrow about global warming. That's not about The Day After from 1983, and the movie Threads that was made in 1984. So to give a synopsis of Threads has the most accurate fictional account of what's going on today. And I compare it to that to a degree. This is what happens. So think of it this way. Ukraine right now, you have Russia, and then you have the West, which is with NATO, which is the US, Western Europe, and some of the Eastern former Soviet countries that went into NATO. Exactly. Threads is a fictional account of Iran. So for those who understand, Iran was run by a king before until the Islamic Revolution of 1979. I am a second generation Iranian. My father was born in Tehran, Iran. They came to
Mhm.
Canada because they also saw the revolution coming. They were Shah loyalists. My great grandfather was a political prisoner of Ayatollah Khomeini.
Mhm.
So when people start trying to say we got to buddy up with the Ayatollahs, no, I understand how dangerous these men are. We can go into
Mhm.
that rabbit hole, but I don't want to. But
Mhm.
with Iran, this is what happens in threads. Iran, the Ayatollah gets overthrown, and the US puts in a pro-Shah military dictatorship. The Ayatollah runs off to Mashdad, which is the city bordering Russia in Iran.
Mhm.
And that's where the Soviets come in to give their arms. What happens is tit for tat, war games happen. One side escalates and then the other side hits back. And then in the end, nuclear weapons are used. And then who's caught in the crossfire? The UK. And it talks
Mhm.
about what society would look like after a nuclear attack. Very disturbing, and that's why everyone needs to really do it needs to understand the history of the Cold War and why it's much more dangerous today than even it's dangerous back then. It was dangerous back then too, but today it's a new level that really has me. It doesn't have me feeling anxious, but it has me feeling pretty stressed of like what could happen if this becomes global.
Oh, for sure, for sure. What you just said, I didn't watch the movie. You did talk to me about it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
before. But what you just said, the way that you explained it, for some reason, it just resonated for me for the Cuban Missile Crisis
Mm-hmm.
that was happening. So, for the people that are not aware of what happened to Cuba and why is Cuba in such a big conflict, is still to a certain degree today with the U.S., is that a similar situation happened is Cuba was under US. Well, it was basically a banana republic for the US. So everybody would go there instead of Las Vegas. They would go to Cuba. There would be prostitutes, hooker, drugs, gambling, and all of that. That was the party town of Cuba. And what happened with the Cuban people with U.S. involvement is that the government was repressing them, and with time they decided to do the revolution, which the Americans were very against it for obvious reasons, because Cuba decided to become a communist country under Che Guevara and Fidel Castro with their leadership. And once that happened, well, the Soviets, they were in good relationships because they're also communist. So they would bring nuclear warheads to Cuba, and that conflict that you're referring to in the movie, the fictional movie, I say in Iran, that is very similar situation to what almost happened in Cuba.
Yeah.
It was a question of a single press of a button, and maybe none of us would be here today.
No.
So it's kind of terrifying for me to see people in North America, especially, um, that are not connected to any of that history. They don't necessarily understand the background of the conflict and the Cold War and all of that. Speaking so publicly and openly about the U.S. and Canada invading Russia and getting nuclear weapons involved, guys, this is dangerous talk. Like you're saying, it's we're very close to World War III. We're walking on that gray line of good and bad, because we don't even know who else is great, is good or bad. And I find it's very crazy that we've installed that binary system in our politics and in our media. There is no more yin yang. There
Mm-hmm.
is just black and white. This is good guy. This is bad guy.
We
For
have been
both.
we're brought up Russians, bad guys,
That's
Americans,
it.
Canada, Western Europe, good guys. And there's
That's it.
more to it. There's more gray than black and white.
Exactly. And let's go as simple as that. Any one of the listeners, can you name me a single movie where the Russian guy is the good guy? I'll wait.
Maybe in James Bond, the one James
James
Bond
Bond.
film, Spy Who Loved Me, because that's where the British and the Russians work together
Yeah.
to fight a supervillain. And that's the one time
Now let me ask you: was it a hero or was it an anti-hero?
in the Russian side.
Yeah.
It was the Bond girl was the Russian spy, and like she ends up falling in love with James Bond, but she's like a good guy. Like she's a good guy, and I think it was the one time the British tried to really they were ahead of their time because this movie came out in 1977 when, just 2 years before the Afghan Soviet invasion. So good on MGM to kind of de-escalate and say, listen, we can work with the Russians here. And then you see this relationship that Bond has with Russia, like in all the Roger Moore films and up to the first Timothy Dalton film, where they work side by side, the Russians and the Brits, which is pretty cool to see.
That's true. But I find it funny how you needed to single out a single movie to have the example.
I know.
That's kind of the idea. The Russians were always portrayed as that evil entity that just wants to capture the whole world and wants to install communism everywhere and evil guys. Sure, Russians are not angels, nor Americans or Canadians and all of that. Everybody does bad things and everybody does good things. And I think that is the core of what people need to start looking into and need to start understanding. Because I find that a lot of people, they don't make the effort to listen, just simply to listen. They think that if they saw a post on Facebook that somebody that they appreciated shared, they would automatically take that opinion because it's somebody that they respect and they appreciate. And then they hear it from a 2-minute snap bit on the media or on TV and stuff like that. And you can't make opinions that involve life and death and decisions and long-term effects for you, for your children, for future generations, over somebody said something on the internet, over somebody that said something on CBC or Fox News or CNN. It doesn't matter. People need to start educating themselves with different points of view to make their own point of view, and that comes to the conflict of Russia. Because if we follow the mainstream media right now, what's going on, what's the story of Russia? Russia does seem like the absolute aggressor. They've been planning it for decades, and they just want to destroy Ukraine. But anybody who sat down and listened what Putin or his administrators or the people that work in the Russian media, what do they say? He says it very openly. We do not want NATO on our borders. And I'm going to take a very, very simple example. I know that most of your listeners are from Montreal or from Quebec, so local guys. So I'm going to give you a little example to understand what is going on in a nutshell, because nobody can explain you the whole conflict. There is things that are happening behind the scenes, and nobody knows everything. But the nutshell is very simple. So Ukraine as a country is divided with a river. Okay, everybody east to that river, not everybody, of course, but generally the majority of the people east to that river, they support the Russian government, the Russian trading partners, the Russian economy, everything that goes along with it. They do not associate it with the European Union. The other side of that river, so on the western side, you have about 67% of the population that are younger population, and they want to join the European Union. And with that comes also joining NATO and having that involved in their military and economics. Now, if you take that position from Putin's side, this is a terrifying situation, because he knows that he's going to have artillery and weapons and rocket launchers not far from his border that could reach Moscow in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, depending on the type of weapon that is being used. So how I like to describe that situation for somebody that is from Montreal and wants to understand a little bit of what's going on there. Imagine you live in Quebec, and Quebec wants to separate. Now you have a different language, you have different mentality, different approach, different education, different law system, and you want to separate from Canada. Well, Western Canada says, no, that's not going to happen, guys. I'm sorry. So Quebec and the rest of Canada, they go into a conflict. They start shooting each other. After 8 years, 14,000 people die in that conflict. And at some point, Canada says to Quebec, we're going to put some Chinese rocket launchers on your border. Well, That sounds terrifying. So what does Quebec do? They invite the U.S. To come to get involved in that conflict. The U.S. disables the rest of Western Canada and gives independence to Quebec. Now, if those words sounded familiar and those locations on those conflicts sounded familiar, that is exactly the analogy of what's going on in Ukraine. So you've got a part of the country that wants to separate. They want to be independent. You've got another part of the country that is fighting them. And then you've got the Russians that after 8 years, they see that civil war that is going on between one part of Ukraine and another part of Ukraine. They decide to step in, not even for the sovereignty of those people that welcome them with the Russian flags. And that just happened yesterday. It's not even for the sovereignty necessarily of those people, but it's to establish a buffer from US, Canadian, NATO influence and weaponry to be right on their front yard. And it's not like I'm inventing it. It's not like I read it on some conspiracy something. I just sat down and I listened to what Putin and his administration have to say. I listened what Justin Trudeau and the Canadian media have to say about the topic. I listened to the Germans. I listened to the British. And from all of that, I form my own opinion from my personal understanding of the world. And that's what I encourage everybody to do.
I agree. And I think, when people ask me, why is Putin doing this? What's going on here? You also have to take it back to, you said you wanted to go to perestroika. So let's go to 1987, 1988. When would you say perestroika really went into full effect?
Officially 91.
Okay.
I think everybody started crumbling really when the wall of Berlin fell.
Yeah.
And that was in 1989,
November 4th of 89. Yeah.
That is correct. So I think that moment really sparked the demolition of the demolition, we'll call it this way, of the Soviet Union. Obviously, there were a lot of indicators and indications that it would happen eventually anyways, because Russia by itself wasn't able to control so many satellite countries. I would say 89.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Because at the time, Gorbachev, who was the last leader of the then Soviet Union, for those who want to know. Okay, so I'm going to say this in a simple term, had a meeting with NATO and Bush Sr. when he became president. And it was in the Reagan years too. The promise was, if there's normalization of coexistence, so that means we live peacefully, no problems, no tensions, no armed guns at each other, will NATO expand? They were told no, they will not expand into the former Eastern satellite countries of the Soviet bloc. This is 1989. So then you say perestroika in 1991, everything dissolves. Yeltsin takes power, and he was inept and drunk, but he does kind of prove some point and later on. So when that happens, Russia becomes Russia proper, as we see today, the Russian Federation. So Soviet Union, no more. It doesn't exist anymore after December 25th. February 1992, Yeltsin of the new Russia visits the United States and says the new Russian Federation offers its hand in coexistence and friendship. And this is what Russians wanted. Everyone was hoping, finally, because they were told, we will help you get into a capitalist society. We will help you get into it. So that's the first promise that's made. But there's a document that leaks from one of George H.W. It's not George W., the one that he grew up with, but his father's, so everyone knows, to the listeners that know. The doctrine comes out called the Wolfowitz Doctrine. And the wording of it is pretty extremist, where it says the United States has to be the dominant superpower, and any country that does try to compete with it will be met with resistance and be put down by the United States. And there's a paragraph about the new Russia. On the new Russia, Russia is coming out of a fog. Russia is recovering from a sickness. And if the Russian bear were to ever get on its hind legs and growl, the United States has an obligation to put it down. So think of that wording. Like how would you feel if you were a Russian and this leaks to you when you're visiting the US as the president of Russia? You want friendship and peace, and this documentation comes out after being told, we want to exist with you.
Yeah. Well, we don't even have to go that far. We don't need to go that long into history. Look at Russia tried to join G7 in 2019. We got refused.
And
They tried
2000.
they tried to join 2014 to the G7, got refused. 2000 got refused. How many times can you refuse a world leading? And it's not a secret that Russia is a world leading country. They have power. The fact is that we're talking about it right now. How many times can you refuse and alienate and bully the bear before the bear really stands up on their back
Mhm.
feet and decides to assert its dominance? And
Not only, yeah.
I'm not justifying sorry, I'm not justifying Russia's actions whatsoever. I just want for listeners to just to see the point, just to understand of Russia, like you said yourself, has been bullied and lied to for so long. No dialogue.
Think of this too. Then in 1998,
Mm-hmm.
NATO does the unthinkable. They start putting their expansion into Lithuania, Latvia, Czech Republic, Hungary. That angers Yeltsin, and Yeltsin says, "Hey, we were told in 1989 you would not expand into that territory."
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
and when people ask, well, what? And then when people ask what was the response, NATO basically said, "Oh, well, that's because the Soviet Union, that's when you were the Soviet Union. That no longer exists. You're now Russia. We can
Mm.
do what we want." But still, how do you think that makes all Russians feel like when this happens? It's like it doesn't. It's like what do you? How would you feel if you were told that when you said, yeah, but that's when you were another country. This you're a different country now.
Yeah. Well, put it into a simple analogy. You're in elementary school and you get bullied by a kid, and the kid tells you, when you're gonna get to high school, I'm gonna stop bullying you because you're gonna be strong enough. And then you get to high school, and what happens? That kid keeps bullying you. Pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And then eventually Putin wanted when Yeltsin stepped down, because we all know Yeltsin didn't do a great job of managing the new Russia and
Yeah.
till the new millennium. Tried, but tried. He tried. Putin came in, and Putin at the time, no one knows who Vladimir Putin is as the successor.
Yeah.
Vladimir came in with a fresh face. He came
Mm-hmm.
in and he came out with his hand open, and not many people know this. And he said, "I want to join NATO. I want to help establish like a world peace and
Yeah.
NATO based and NATO, and it's in the documents if people want to look it up. Like if you
Yeah.
look at like if you want to look it up, and when you look at like how they said what they said to Russia, and they basically said take a walk, which is a nice way of saying fuck off.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And it's something that Russians and even Eastern Europeans are kind of used to at this point. Um, what I do find crazy is, yes, definitely there is a lot of controversial issues that are happening in Ukraine right now. There is actually, if anybody wants to go down the rabbit hole, there is a very interesting Twitter trend that is going on right now with the hashtag US Biolabs. I'm not going to get into that, but just write hashtag US Biolab. It's about the U.S. involvement in world conflicts and how they invest military and intelligence in different areas in the world. Like, well, obviously we can look at Ukraine, which is a very recent example, but we can also look at Libya. We can look at Syria, we can look at Kosovo, we can look at Afghanistan, and we can look at Iraq. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can name more countries that the US got involved in the promises of bringing peace and unity and democracy and capitalism. And what happened to those countries today after the US left them? The greatest example of that is what's happening right now in Afghanistan. So, as some of us that follow the news and what's going on, we know that the U.S. In the past year, Biden pulled out all the forces from Afghanistan, which is good, cool. The problem with that is that they left 2 trillion. Now, a lot of people don't understand even what is trillion. So it's 2,000 billion. So it's 2 million millions dollars of weaponry, of artillery, of rockets, helicopters, airplanes, you just name it, infrastructure that they left for the Taliban. Well, fun fact, but 27 nuclear warheads. Um, and what happens to that? Do we hear about it? We heard about it for about a week. We heard some conservatives or Democrat Americans complaining about it for about a week, but we don't hear about that anymore. Right now, we're hearing about Ukraine. But I have family in Uzbekistan in those regions, and they all tell me that currently what's going on is that the Taliban is threatening the stance that they're going to take over because, hey, you're our Muslim brothers, and we're going to come and bring the Sharia law, and they just got a new arsenal of weapons. So while the whole world is focusing on what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, there is a major, major, major geopolitical conflict that was created by the Biden administration right in Central Asia, which is threatening Soviet Union satellite countries. Again, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan.
Turkmenistan.
Exactly, all those countries. So, and where do we hear about it? We don't hear about it in CNN, Fox News, BBC, whatever. We hear about it in Russian news. So they're facing a different reality that as much as we can sit and discuss about it, we can't understand it because we're not there and we don't know what are the struggles that they're living with. And I think that that's the most essential, like I'll go back to it a million times probably. I think that's the most essential thing that people need to do. They need to open their ears and they need to start listening.
Not only that, too, they also, when you said the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan, the one thing that the U.S. is very good at that I've learned in my studies is they're amazing at giving weapons to the mujahideen, these freedom fighters, to say, okay, they're going to fight and take out these tyrants. But they have a very bad, lousy short-term memory of getting those guns back because it always costs more to buy them back than to give them. So that's that's the thing that people need to do. And if you want to understand that, watch Nicolas Cage in Lord of War, because that movie is what got me into history.
I'm not a big fan of Nicolas Cage, but that movie, excellent, a very good one. There was also was it Blood Diamonds with DiCaprio? That was a pretty great movie. It's not about that topic, but it's about warlords and their involvement of like the gun lords, their involvement in Africa and stuff like that. Great movie. I think it's based actually on a true story of a refugee that lives today in England. Yeah.
It's just the thing, because we think these liberation movements are very good. But like for example, I mean, in Afghanistan, there was the U.S. miscalculated where they allied with one resistance leader called Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, one of the worst people you could imagine as a warlord, killed thousands innocently. And then there was Ahmad Shah Massoud, who fought the Soviets, beat the Soviets, and then eventually he was killed by bin Laden 2 days before 9/11 because he's trying to warn the U.S. there's an attack coming. You have to be ready for this attack. And he was killed 2 days before 9/11. The U.S. ignored Massoud. They always took the side of Hekmatyar because the Reagan administration thought he had the most power. He had the most people in his army, whereas Massoud was allied by the British. Massoud became this defense secretary of before the Taliban Afghanistan in the 90s, but then he had to flee to the Panjshir Mountains where the Northern Alliance and that's the thing with the US, we're giving weapons to these freedom fighters in the Ukraine, but not many people realize that it was leaked that some of these groups are really right-wing extremist neo-Nazis, and it's not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. It was leaked. Look up Breaking Points. They talk about it.
Yeah. No, it's very true. Let's put our tinfoil hat for a moment. How do you think this conflict is going to continue? Where do you see it progressing in a month, 6 months?
Okay, I'm gonna ask you the same question, but I'm gonna give you the answer like this. There's gonna be best case scenario and worst case scenario.
Love it.
So best case scenario, Zelensky and Putin come to an agreement, but Zelensky is very weakened. He becomes much more weakened, so he has to rebuild, and that makes it easier for Putin to prop up the other side of the river, to like start getting people to say, hey, we need to get Yakiminovich back into power, or someone that can like help rebuild on a dime that has Russian connections. Or Putin takes Ukraine, and Zelensky resigns, and they put in Yakiminovich or another person that's pro-Russia, and they start establishing it's basically Ukraine becomes like you see in Belarus with Lukashenko, not a puppet state entirely, but just to keep NATO at bay, to say, hey, you will never come into NATO like Belarus. Just let's keep that in mind. That's the best case scenario. Middle case scenario, it escalates for another month until NATO has to act one small part of Article 5, like a sub point in Article 5 to get involved. That's the middle point. The reason why I say there's a middle point is because right now, as we speak, based on the source I had, like no source that I saw, Mahid Nawaz, who was on the Joe Rogan Experience, has tweeted.
I actually watched that too.
That Ramzan Kadyrov, one Putin's strongman in Chechnya, has sent out his brigade. These guys are going to, if they go into Ukraine as it's reported, the bloodshed will be much worse. These are the worst of the worst. They are hungry. They will use the religion. They will use a backward. They will use a backwards interpretation of Islam. They're gonna use it it's like Sharia for them. They're gonna justify killing, raping, and violence. And it's not to sound like an Islamophobe, but just to let you know that these are the bad apples that are going to be heading into Ukraine. And this is where NATO has to go in to get these guys out because of Chechnya. And the worst case scenario is war games start to happen. A NATO aircraft shoots down a Russian aircraft, let's just say. And then Putin says, you know what? Let's start a refugee crisis in Poland. And then that way the refugees will say, we need Russia. We need Russia.
Yeah.
And then once Russia goes into Poland or one of those NATO allies that are within the sphere of Russia, like Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, that's when you have a global conflict. And that's the worst case scenario.
I agree. I really like your take on that. Actually, your midpoint, what you said with the involvement of Chechnya, that kind of resonates to me of what happened in Maidan in 2014. I'm not sure if it was exactly in 13 or 14, but as the people that follow a little bit, so there was a revolution, a democratic revolution that was happening in Ukraine as of 2013, where students were going to the streets in the city of Maidan to the capital there, to the center of the city, sorry. And they were just protesting against the leader and their decisions of joining with Russia and not siding with the European Union. And what happened? So there was a strong Berkut, I think. I don't remember exactly their name, but I think they were called Berkut. So it's basically the equivalent of the SWAT team, the riot control team. Those guys, they started beating up those students. That flowered or rolled into a pretty chaotic situation where the Ukrainian government, they actually released some prisoners that were in prison, and they armed them with batons. They infiltrated the protesters and stuff like that, and they started beating up their own people just because that was their get out of jail free card, and they got a couple of $100, and they were super happy about that. So it's actually quite interesting to hear the point about Chechnya getting involved, because it does resonate. And again, it's not something against the Chechen people or something like that, but it's any other interference of a person that will be benefiting from spewing that conflict. That's not a good thing, because realistically looking, the Russian people are not benefiting from this conflict. The Ukrainian people definitely are not benefiting from this conflict. Even the leaders, I highly doubt that they're benefiting anything from this conflict, except for maybe a few select individuals that will be profiting in their legacy, in economic ways and stuff like that. So going back to the question that I asked you, my best and worst case scenario is a little bit less cynical in that sense. I don't think that other than the military involvement that we're seeing today, there is going to be much more escalation in a military term. The reason why I'm saying that is if you would look at the first few hours of the conflict, Russia's first actions were to disable government websites in Ukraine, to give certain media blackout so the people couldn't be communicating, and attacking key points um, where NATO would be able to bring in forces, weaponry, and whatnot. So we're talking about airports, ports, different communication areas, and again, hashtag US biolabs. People look into that. It's a very interesting thing. Basically, I'm just going to sum it up in a couple of words. Is that the US has multiple biological laboratories that they're working on experiments on different viruses, bacteria, different pests that could be potentially used as bioweapons. So that's one of the reasons why Russia is attacking all those areas. It's basically what they did. They did airstrikes. They asserted air dominance in the area. And at this point, I don't see a reason for much more military escalation. Now, best case scenario, I think it would be similar to your best case scenario, where they find a common language, everything gets diffused. The Ukraine is being split in two, where you have a sovereign portion of the eastern the eastern side of the country that is going to be independent, and maybe will be called the Eastern Ukraine or whatnot, and you'll have a second part, and we're just not going to hear it for a few years, up until something will start brewing in Afghanistan and all of those. The worst case scenario, and I think some points there will be used, is the fact that the Chinese, they're looking at Russia and they're looking in North America right now. So it's almost predictable that they're going to step into Taiwan. If I'm not mistaken, I did see reports about it yesterday. If somebody wants to pull out a source or something, I know that Chinese naval ships, they cross the maritime border of Taiwan. So not sure what's going on there. We're kind of being kept hidden from that. But in the worst case scenario, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, it will really depend on NATO's reaction to this. Because, as I said, I don't think it's going to be escalating to a military war, but we're going to be fighting a intelligence war, so spyware. We're talking about hacking. We're talking about massive hacking. So even a person that has a TikTok on their phone, the moment that you install TikTok and you put your password and all of that, the software developers from China, from the mother company of TikTok, they could, through hacker ways, I'm not a hacker myself, so I have no way to saying that, they could hack into your phone. And we're talking about personal data, and that could lead to a company. So if you're using your company's phone, like for example, you work in the media in CNN and you use your phone and you have TikTok, well, they could be eventually being able to infiltrate bigger media outlets. So I think that the really dark and nasty route that this conflict is going to take is really to be media, to divide, to split, and to somewhat misinform and to install fear with people, so such action would not reappear in the future.
There's also another player too that we're not talking, that everyone likes to forget about, Iran, because Iran is allied with Russia and China, and this is not to sound like I'm pro-Israeli or anything, but listen, Iran uses Hezbollah to attack Israel. So if Iran, think of what's going on in Ukraine, and then with China's looking at Taiwan, Iran is looking, eventually Iran's going to get some of that aid money that was frozen, and they're going to start engaging in terroristic activities. And the reason is, and the thing is, we all know that the U.S.'s biggest ally is Israel. And we're not going to talk about Palestine and all that conflict. That's not what this conversation's about. But we all know that if Israel feels threatened, they will go after Iran. They will go. They have nukes. They don't talk about it. They have the best. They have the Mossad. They don't talk about it. Iran likes to say we have it better, but why is it that every time that they're about to do something with their nuclear program, Israel somehow gets to their scientists? So think of how many times they're prolonging it. But now what we're seeing is, if Iran feels that they are ballsy enough to attack Saudi Arabia and then to attack Israel using Hezbollah, what you're going to see is, we all know that that secretly Israel's allied with the Arab countries to do their dirty work. Israel's going to go after Iran. That's another escalation that the world does not want as well. It's
Oh, for sure.
Taiwan and the Middle East, I think.
That could set a lot of precedents even for Peru. Like I don't see why I don't see why they wouldn't annex. I'm blanking on the name of the country right beside it.
Venezuela?
No, not Venezuela, but anyways, but let me search it up for a quick. But
Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia,
Ecuador.
Ecuador.
There you go. Yes, exactly. I was blanking on this one. Sorry about that. So yeah, so there's been quite a lot of conflicts going with Peru and Ecuador, and like they're completely not related to that conflict, but it could set a precedent of just invasion and annexation and all of that. And yeah, war with Iran and Israel, that could be a very terrifying thing. That would definitely be a terrifying thing, because it's not even about the conflict itself. It's about the number of people that live in that region. A war with Iran, with Asia, will inflict with the millions and billions of people that will suffer, that will have to move elsewhere, and that's going to be very catastrophic for the whole world. So I'd rather, for the moment, close my eyes on Israel and Iran.
Let's not, because we could go on a massive rabbit hole there, and then it's like, and I was trying to explain that to my coach, but my friend Mohammed, and because I said to him, and I tried to explain, I said, it's so complicated, the Middle East. I said, there's if you really want to ask where there's so much grayness, it's the Middle East. And as I said, you cannot pick a side. I said, and that's why when those conflicts happen between Israel and Palestine, I stay out of it. I do not get involved. I stay far away. I turn off the news. I mute people that post stuff that's pro-Israel, and I mute stuff that pro-Palestine. I don't want to get involved with that, because it's the quickest way to end friendships. And it's like, and at the end of the day, it's really not worth it. And it's like, even with this Ukraine thing, the one thing I'm very worried about is that, like, what if people start looking at Russians in a very bad way? Because, like, look, it's not like they've been through enough, and we don't need that. We don't need to alienate people.
Yeah, that's true. And to be honest, I don't know how much more badly can Russians be viewed. It seems ridiculous to say, because I'm white. When I go outside, I look just like any other Canadian Quebecer, especially now that I have my hair pretty long. It's tied right now, but yeah, with my hat or whatever, when I go to the groceries, I look like any other Canadian that was born here. But as soon as people find out that I'm Russian, well, there goes the vodka jokes and the bad guy jokes, and I thought the Russians were a lot more mean. I thought that Russians were serious, or they start saying simply swear words that they learned from some idiot in Russian. And it's that view of Russians. That's what we see in here, but if we look in Europe, it's way worse. Russians, unfortunately, we're not the people that is liked just because of all the I would call it misinformation and lack of communication that was spewed over so many decades, that brooded to the situation that we are today. So I hope no more Russian hatred will grow from it. But at that point, I mean,
you get used to it. You get used to it, and you're just like, yeah. You just roll with the punches, and you're like, yeah. You're like,
exactly. And I've lived through that, being Jewish too. Like, how many Jewish jokes there are there, the anti-Semitic thing, and like things that pass casually without people even noticing them, just because our skin color is not different and whatnot. So a thing about the Jewish community, actually, since the coronavirus started, all the lockdowns and all of that, there is a lot more anti-Semitism online that you would be able to see even on Facebook. Sometimes I see some of my friends sharing things, and you kind of learn to close your eyes on that stuff, because at the end of the day, what are you going to change? What is it going to change for me to talk about the experience that I had in Israel when I lived there for 12 years? Because somebody read about it on CNN, so they know more than me. So my opinion doesn't matter anymore. And it's I think I'll repeat it a million times during this podcast. People need to start listening.
They need to start listening, and they need to start educating themselves in terms,
Yeah.
instead of listening to the media. Go on YouTube, look up both sides, go to your library. Podcasts, they're free. It's like
That's
taking a
it.
course. It's like, or YouTube, like some of the, like there's Armchair History where the guy does animations about the conflict. There was
Hmm.
another channel, Caspian. It's something with Caspian, did a beautiful historical context of the Afghanistan conflict, of like why is Afghanistan where it is today. And I understand more than I ever did. And I think like, even if you take history class and you're like, oh, I'll never need this. Well, why is it that I have people coming to me asking what's like, I understand I offered. So I'm not trying to, I just want to say this clear. Like, I like that I offered. But then when you have people that are like, that used to laugh at me and be like, oh, you want to be a history teacher, this and that. Now they're coming to me. What's going on? I'm so confused.
It's
I'll
true.
be nice. I'll be the bigger person. But but now, but maybe but sometimes I should, but sometimes I should have say, I think you should educate yourself and listen more than watch the mainstream media, because you're only getting one snap of a narrative that's not complete.
That is true. And if we're looking at it, we're blessed today. We're blessed with the amount of information that we have accessible for us. And most of us can Google things and look at the sources and stuff like that. The problem, and there is a lot of highly educated people that have touched this topic. I think the problem with mainstream media nowadays is that if you looked at media in the 70s, they would present you a story, they would
Mm-hmm.
interview a person, just like what you're doing right now, speaking to me. And you would hear the person's point of view. And it's for you, the listener, to make your own deduction.
Mm-hmm.
Today's media, whatever you see on TV, they give you the opinion that you should have before they present you the issue that is in stake. So that does create a lot of conflict. But at the same time, how many people do want to educate themselves? How many people do want to get out of their comfort zone and say, oh yeah, I was right about this one, or oh no, I was terribly wrong about this one. Hey, I'm sorry, maybe I'll go educate myself a little bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so true. And that's what I wanted to really do this conversation with you, because as I said, you're from that region, you understand the mentality, you understand the dynamics and the cultures. Whereas, I'm born here, but I'm always curious. And when I have people telling me, like I had one of my friends, I'm so sorry to put you on the spot. I'm sorry, Natalie, but Natalie's smart though. She's a cool girl. She's like, Andrew, she's like, I've seen you talk history with Mo about Ukraine, Russia. I need to understand this. Can you please help me understand? Because she genuinely wanted, and she genuinely wanted to know. Nat, by the way, Nat's one of my biggest supporters of the show. So Nat, when you hear this, I'm giving you a shout out in a positive way here, just so you know. So, but like, and that's the thing. And she said, I think you should really do either put the conflict in your Instagram stories or do a podcast. And then I put my status, as you saw, and I said, what? I think it's best we do the podcast, because in a long
Yeah,
form conversation, you'll get more. And as I said, you want the long form conversation, I'll do it. Let's do it. And
that's
that's the
it.
best way to do it, to understand. And then you come up with your own comprehension, and then you go out and do more research at your behest. And if you do that, I think that this conversation is a success. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's it. Same here. And actually, just for people that want to be in context, I said from the get-go, I'm not getting involved in this one. Been there, done that. And that's actually what sparked the idea of us having this podcast. Well, me coming on your podcast, because I didn't want to talk about it on Facebook.
No.
I didn't want to just put a small message without people understanding the whole history of that. And nobody has time to write all of that.
If you're spending your time tweeting on Facebook, arguing in comments, you're not living life. It's a form of mental illness. I hate to break it. Like when I see people say, look what I said in this status, I say, what did you accomplish? Did you feel happy accomplishing that in that time?
Mhm.
No. well, what could you have been doing? Maybe you could have been training. You could have been working on your hobby. You could have been working on a skill. I just don't have time. Like, I don't even pay attention. I don't like even paying attention to the comments anymore. Than when people, it doesn't do me any good. I do what I can. I improve it. I appreciate feedback for those who like it, but when those who have never done it, and I just say to myself, you know, you're on the sidelines. Stay on the sidelines and let the workers do the work.
That is true. That is true. That is very well said. And anybody that is listening, from a personal suggestion, if you do have trouble with social media, if you do feel that it's causing stress in your life, if you do feel that it's not always a positive place or platforms to be on, but you still want to keep it because that's the way that you're connecting with people, go in the options, remove the notifications, all of them. When you don't see that red dot on top of your Facebook app, or you see that constant everybody that liked, or just Facebook sending you a suggestion for maybe a video that you're going to enjoy, once you remove that from your constant closed screen of your phone, social media kind of takes a back seat. And in the day of today, where people spend more and more and more time on social medias, I think people should do that. They should disconnect a little bit, or at least make it less obvious for their daily routine. So important point. Remove your notification, folks. It helps. You'll see them anyways, just not in a red logo.
Oh, I did that. It does such wonders. The only thing that I have on notifications is for my messaging, like my iMessage and my Facebook message and WhatsApp. The rest, it's like,
exactly.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be, I don't want it to be dominating my life. And now, of course, I do post a lot of my stories, but that's because that's just me. I like posting, you know, and people, when they look at my stories are a mix of what in the absolute fuck did I just watch? It's so speaking of Russian, so we will talk about Russia. My favorite page is Look at This Russian. It shows like the boonies of Russia, and it shows like the shit that goes down in like the really rural sides of Russia, or like Russia in general. So I post that in my story. Barstool Sports, drunk people doing things, that Russian dash cam camera videos, you name it. It's like I don't know, but social media, the internet's a great thing, but it can also be a very dark place.
Definitely. No, but Russians, I'm sorry, Russians make great funny videos.
They do. They really
Russian
do.
men especially.
Can you explain this to me, Kay? What is the deal? Why is it that the stereotype about Russians is they love Adidas? Where does that come from?
Oh man, that's a great question. I have no idea what it has to do with the Adidas and that pose, that squat. We're famous for it, and I'm pretty sure it's like a single guy that just started it, and everybody just followed. I wish I knew.
I know. Just like it's and like, I'm sending stuff to my friends from Look at This Russian, and I said, and like when I send it, they always say, why is he wearing everything Adidas? Why does he have an Adidas? Why does he have the Adidas buzz cut in his head? And it's hilarious. It's my favorite page to look at. Like I remember I went on a spree of sending my friends all these videos, and they said, I feel like I've been to Russia without being in Russia thanks to this page.
Exactly. You got the carpet on the wall. As you see, I don't have carpets on my walls. Yeah. The carpet on the wall, the Adidas, the little Pioneer hat, a cigarette is a must. A black eye, because those guys, they're thugs, so they're fighting in the streets. So they always have a black eye, and the bottle of vodka. Actually, we call them gopniki.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean exactly? Oh, it means just those people.
And there's also the occasional former soldier that has their AK-47 still, and it's
yeah, definitely. And he has to wear a blue and white tank top to show that he was part of the Marines.
Wow, that's
the
hilarious.
Russian Marines. Yeah.
Exactly, the Russian Marines. It's just crazy. Like it's a different world over there. I still want to go there, even though people be like, you would want to go. Yes, I want to go there. I want to fly in a MiG-29. I want to say I did that. Like I love the video game Ace Combat Flight Simulator. I love military history. I've always loved air. I always loved aviation, especially with like the Suhois series, the MiG, F-16, F-22. So Russia's the only place I think you can really fly in a MiG, or maybe one of the stand countries.
Probably. Well, in Russia, anything can be arranged with the right person.
My dad went there. My dad went there. Yeah, he told me it's a different world.
Yeah. Well, today we're very privileged in our world because of the way that we can travel across the world. I mean, at this point, we don't even have to travel because we have social media. We've got video communication. We've got all that that possibility. But definitely going to the country and visiting, seeing the people, seeing the culture, learning about it is a great idea. And to be honest, like if ever you want to go to Russia, I totally encourage that because you're so close to Europe. Don't go anytime soon. I mean, give it a couple of months at least. But it's I totally encourage you that. Unfortunately, myself, I've never been to Russia. I just never came to a possibility. Always wanted to. Always stayed in contact with people from there. I heard a lot of stories from Russia, from my students, from their parents, from my family. But hey, man, if you're going to Russia, maybe we should go on a plane together and visit the place. I'll be your
I'm
translator.
down. I'm down. You'll be my translator, interpreter.
That's it.
And for anyone, and for everyone that wants to know the sources that I use, everyone should look up Vladimir Pozner, who's a journalist. He's a very accomplished Russian journalist that did a talk at Yale about how the West created the current Russian situation after the Soviet Union, as we spoke in our discussion. Look up any Russian history videos on YouTube, like Armchair History, or there's other history channels too. I can't name them off the top of my head. Those are my sources, guys. And obviously you, because you're a primary source and so forth. So guess we'll conclude it here. Benny, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people connect with you if they ever want to like talk and do Sambo?
I keep my life a little bit private.
Yeah.
So if it's necessary and you want to contact me, you're more than welcome. I mean, you tagged me on Facebook, so you can write me a personal message. That would be a pleasure for me to discuss in a civil, educational way. If you have questions about Sambo or something like that, definitely Facebook would be the best way to reach me. If not, I am sometimes on Instagram, not very active on that, but yeah, definitely feel free, people.
Perfect. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. Like, to do this emergency podcast, everyone has been awaiting it. I'm gonna probably publish it today, maybe more likely tomorrow, because shout out to Nima, like my he's an MMA manager. I know Gegard Mousasi's fighting today, so that's gotta I'm focused on that right now when he fights. But it will be out. Like I did promise, I'm putting the episode out as soon as possible, so it will be out on YouTube. Audio, we're gonna work on that for audio listeners, but like it's on YouTube only right now. The show.
Beautiful. Well, I thank you very much for bringing me on your podcast, and be glad to pop by again next time we have a topic like this.
And then in person too, hopefully, because that's in the works.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Benny, thank you so much, man. It was such an honor to have you today.
Thank you so much.